Hello everybody and welcome to a Release 19 test overview video. This one is specifically to do with the activities functionality, which is the main piece of functionality in the Release 19 rule set and associated data. So I'm just going to go through an overview of what activities are and how they're used, basically. So in the test channel, if you load up a Pathfinder 2nd edition rule set and activate the core rules module, that's the only module that currently has any test data for release 19 in it. It will populate the system with probably about 130, 140 standard activities. Now, these activities, they're similar to kind of feat and ability records. If we just have a look at maybe the let's have a look at the treat ones activity, because this one introduces quite a lot of data into it. You notice that you can do different levels with treat wound, expert, legendary, and master. So we actually have different versions of those that cover the different DCs and the amount that's actually healed. But basically, one of the main things to look at here is the category that this is in and the section that this is in. So when this is added to a character sheet, it will be created in the skill activities category and the medicine trained section underneath that. So if I just open one of our characters, we'll open Valeros. I'll just give him a portrait while we're going through everything there. Go down to one of the Pathfinder. I think there's one in the beginner box. We'll give him a one of his usual portraits there. Sorry, I was just digressing. So this is an activity. Basically, this is a representation of data that would be in the skills tab anyway on your character sheet. So if I go to skills, treat wounds is under medicine, so I'd open the skill link to medicine. And then you just see underneath here, a description of what you can use medicine for. You can use it for recall knowledge, administer first aid. If you're trained, you can treat disease, treat poison, treat wounds. And basically, this would give you all of the details of those individual activities underneath there. But if you wanted to roll medicine, you'd have to then come here and you'd have to roll the medicines, and if you healed or did damage as part of treat wounds, you'd have to then manually work that out with the with the GM. Or some people would use some of Shade Raven's excellent drag and drop modules and create spell classes in here for special abilities in the actions tab. And like here, this was imported from a release 18 pre-gen, and this has essentially those things kind of manually coded into here, what we're now doing automatically in the activities tab. And lots more, because we've got these treat wounds and everything else. So here, we can see we've got all the effects benefits, we've got what happens with the various success levels. It's set to auto create, so when you create a new character, it's going to automatically populate those. If for some reason you don't want to auto create all of those activities, if you set the R19 update add new activities experimental development campaign option to off, it won't do it. Or if you want it to populate some of them but then you want to delete some, just leave that there, because it will only auto populate if there's no activities at all. So if you can delete a few of these and it's not going to repopulate them. As long as you have at least one activity in the activities tab, it'll never try to repopulate them. If you delete all of them and you have that option, that campaign option set to on, then it's going to recreate them. So that could be some way of recreating activities as well if you wanted to manually do that at some point in the future. Delete all of them from the activities tab, leave that on, and you'll probably have to restart Fantasy Grounds because it'll have cached the data. But then when you open the character sheet, it will repopulate with the base data for every activity that is open that is set to auto create. So they can see automatically add this activity when a PC is created. Now, new functionality as well within Release 9 is this new how to use field. If you click on the help button, when we go live, this will take you to a wiki entry, but at the moment we have this in Google Docs. It's read-only, so you can't change it, and this will be updated as we go through. But this gives you a lot of information. You have some various areas to do that will be populated as we go through, but it gives you quite a lot of extra information about how to use Fantasy Grounds and these activities in general, and some. Generally, this how to use field will have some data in it. Depending on the complexity of the activity, it may have a little bit of data or it may have a lot. So this is just saying for treat ones, use targeting for efficient use of this activity. That means don't use drag and drop because we're going to use the apply all actions functionality, which doesn't currently support drag and drop, unfortunately. So with this, what we have is we just have a look at it. Normally, you do a DC 15 medicine check. So if we look at the first action here and we open that up, it's a target DC, it's a medicine check against a target DC of 15. So I can actually change this because I was looking at the base activity. Let's actually go and open the character. Sorry about that. So I can just going to search on treat ones. I'll go through this toolbar at the bottom a little bit later, how to use it. Treat ones, I'm just going to go with the normal one. It has a DC 15 medicine check, so if I have a look at that, medicine, I can cycle through these if I wanted to change them. Fixed DC 15. There's no extra traits. It's a minimum action. What Fantasy Grounds can do is it can hide and show some of these actions. You see at the moment, treat ones, it's got all of those actions in there, but as you'll see in a moment, I don't need all of them to actually do this. So you can actually change this display down here to summary. You don't see any actions. And that can allow you to either, carry out the actions by clicking the magnifying glass, or you can do actions from opening up an entry and clicking them in there as well, as long as it's the entry on the character sheet, not the one from the reference, not from the sidebar, because it'll be tied to that character sheet doing that action. Or you can do min actions, and what this is going to do, it's just going to give you the buttons that you need to actually carry out that action. Because what this is here, we see we have our skill check, DC 15, and then we have a heal check 4d8, which is tagged with the critical success result state. So that will only be applied against a critical success. A normal success does 2d8, and a critical failure does 1d8 damage to the target. So we can roll, and then we can click the apply all actions button, and that will apply the relevant action based off the result of the actual check. So let's see that in action. So in order to use targeting correctly, we'll need to have some actors in the combat tracker. So I'm going to put Valeros in there. I'm going to put Harsk in there as well. Harsk's already got quite a lot of ones on him, down to 2 hit points. So I'm going to target Harsk, and then for my treat ones, rolling not the expert, legendary, a master. I'm not even trained in treat ones, so I shouldn't be doing this, but just to show you how it actually works. So medicine against a fixed DC of 15. 10, that's a failure, so that's not going to do anything. So I'll just kind of give myself a plus 20 on this just to make sure we kind of get a critical, so you can see something actually working. So 29, that's critical success. I'll do 48, and then I apply all actions. So that's going to remember that Valeros did a treat ones to Harsk, and so when I click this, it's going to look at the previous result of a treat ones from Valeros to Harsk, which is a critical success, so it should roll 48. So 20, and that's exactly the amount of damage that Harsk had taken, so it actually goes down, completely heals him. The usual thing, in Fantasy Grounds, it does 2 steps. In theory, you could move this all into one button, but what happens if, somebody does actually roll a critical failure? And, if somebody's really close to dying or something like that, that will be the time for a hero point. So you'd spend your hero point, then you'd re-roll. I hope you don't get a critical. At least I just got a failure that time. so it wouldn't actually do any damage. So that's pretty standard within Fantasy Grounds. 2 steps for the actions, one to roll the activity, make sure you applied all your modifiers and everything else, and maybe re-roll if you want to use a hero point, and then apply the activities. With this apply all actions, it means that you don't have to say, okay, which button am I going to use based off this? You can just click that button once. So it's very, very quick to use these kind of activities and heal up people and things like that. Another good example of a complex activity is Feint. So this is where you try a deception check against your opponent's perception. And then depending on how you get, either they're flat-footed to you or you're flat-footed to them and things like that, depending on exactly what actually happens. So we'll just see, what happens here with this one. So rolling our deception against Harsk, that's a failure. That's actually not going to do anything, but, we could just apply all effects if we wanted to just clear out that success for later. Critical failure. So I'm going to click that, and what you see is, so specifically for a critical failure, your feint backfires. You are flat-footed against melee attacks the target's attempts against you until the end of your next turn. So we see here we've had this duration added to us. We're flat-footed, but we're flat-footed to Harsk. So we're using what's known as effect targeting. So although it was applied by us, we're flat-footed to Harsk. So this is new functionality in release 19 in terms of automatically doing that. Previously, you would have had to have used effect targeting to kind of do that for you. You'd have to do it manually, or you'd have had to have held down shift before you and targeted them and then applied the effect, and it got quite complex. But now in release 19, you can see these 2 buttons here. There's ETTT and ETTS. What those are, it's effect targeting to target. So that means that we apply the effect to ourselves, but it applies to only actions from the target. The other one is ETTS, which is we apply the effect to the target, but it only applies to us when we attack them. And that's very important, specifically with flat-footed and this feint being, the actual a good example. If we go through a list of what the actual success levels here is, critical success, you throw your enemy's defenses against you entirely. It's flat-footed against melee attacks until the end of your next turn. So we can see here that the critical success effect is flat-footed for 2 rounds, and it reduces at the end of turn. So at the end of my turn, it'll reduce to 1, and then it'll be active until the end of my next turn. And we're using this to self because the target that I feint is only flat-footed to me, not flat to anybody else. So this is, really good, quick and easy functionality for especially rogues and people like that who apply flat-footed, just to make sure that, previously you would have had to applied it and used effect dragging, or maybe some people might just, have handled it manually and, made sure there was a flat-footed effect before they rolled their attack, and then make sure there was a flat-footed effect before they rolled damage. This would all be taken into account now, and it could be applied automatically with a roll for your deception, and then apply all actions. The correct one's going to be applied. The second one's interesting. Your flow is flat-footed, but only momentarily. The target is flat-footed against your next melee attack that you attempt against it till the end of your current turn. So it's set to end of turn for 1 round, so it's only valid until the end of this current turn. It's targeting to self, so it's only flat-footed against me. I mean, the chance of somebody else doing an attack during my turn is extremely unlikely, but, just in case that triggers somebody's ready to action or something like that, it makes sure that the flat-footed effect only applies to you. And also, it's actually got 2 flat-footed effects here. Why has it got that? It's because to just apply flat-footed effects to the next action, you'd need it for an attack, and then that would be expended on the next action, and you'd also need it for the damage. So, you need to apply flat-footed, then it would go with the action. You need to apply flat-footed and it would go with the action. Or you'd put an effect that's flat-footed and it's available to the end of the turn, but then if you did additional attacks, it would still be there. You'd have to remove it. This is kind of giving you the best of both worlds. There's no perfect thing here because essentially if we roll and we miss, we've still got to remove one of those flat-footeds. So just as an example, we put flat-foot... Harsk is flat-footed to Valeros, and he's got those two things there. I'll just get rid of that. And then, Valeros does an attack. His first attack will apply flat-footed, so he's now, defense effects -2. We've hit. Then we roll our damage, and if we had any effects that, applied additional precision damage because he's flat-footed, that would come into effect now, and that final action would... flat-footed effect would be actually removed. Yeah, in fact, looking at it, it's removed both of those effects. I think that's because it's set to action and not on next roll. Let's see if we can get that right. That'll be a quick update I need to do. This is what testing's all about. So Valeros's attack should only remove one of the flat-footed. Sorry, I'll get it right. The third time I need to set it to once per modifier, so it only removes one modifier at a time. I do apologise. Get there in the end. So yeah, so one attack removes just one of the flat-footeds, and then our damage removes the other flat-footed. So yeah, so I've just got to remember to update that. I'll just make a note of that. Okay, sorry about that. Slight issue there. But when the effects are correctly set up, all of these doing a feint is just so incredibly easy. So I just click the perception button. Sorry, the deception button, critical failure, click that, and I'm flat-footed to that creature till the end of my next turn because I critically failed. And then I just move on and do, anything else that I want to do, and check that. That was one action. Maybe I then want to do something like a trip. So then I'd try and trip the target. $17, that's actually a success, that's great. So then I'd apply that. The target's land prone, so the target's now prone, that's great. But notice what actually happened about that. You probably haven't seen it. It's now because the athletics trip is set to actually use MAP, so increase multi-attack penalty. So we've now tripped him, we're still flat-footed to him, but he's probably now flat-footed to us, and we increased our multi-attack penalty to MA2. So that's there now, and now if we make an attack, okay, he's going to have -2 to his AC, but we're going to have -5 because it's our second attack action this round, or a second action with an attack trait this round. So that's all tracking it for you. Notice the attack doesn't currently increase because I'm working out how I can do that for activities that do multiple attacks but don't increase your multi-attack penalty. So just remember that now. If I wanted to try again, I mean, I'm out of actions. I've feinted, I've tripped, I've attacked. I'm out of actions. But if I did do something else, I'd then do, my multi-attack 3 for the next attack or something like that. So that just gives you an idea of how things get tracked now, a little bit better, a little bit more automatically. And like I say, in the future, then attacks are probably going to be tracked a little bit better as well. Based off the type of activity the attack was used with, so strikes and attacks and things like that. And then, eventually at the end of my second turn, I'd no longer be flat-footed to Harsk, and we'd kind of move on from there. So, as you can see, these activities can be quite complex, but they're programmed in, and if you use the min actions tab, a lot of it's hidden from you, and also for the complex ones you can check out the how to use to give an idea of how to actually use it properly. But yeah, there's a lot of activities available to you. I mean, I see this as, it looks pretty complex when you first look at it, but just realize that there's various activities in certain areas, and you can scroll through things. I really just find this search really just great. You know, the GM asks me to make a recall knowledge check. I just type REC. Okay, you know, it's crafting. It's a secret check, so you make that check. And you can see the little secret trait there comes up, so the players don't actually see it. You know, it's all pretty straightforward. So I think when people first look at this activities tab, they go, oh, there's so much information there. But there's a few tools available to you to make it easier to use. The first thing is these buttons down there. I'm going to have to change these to make them a little bit easier to see, like these buttons here. You can collapse everything down to the highest level. So we have item activities, class activities, feats, skills, encounters, exploration, downtime activities. You can expand them all to see all of them again, collapse them down. You can expand individual entries, you know, expand and collapse them as well. And one thing that's quite nice about this is if you have something that you regularly use, like you use your shield block quite regularly, there's a little star to the left of that. And if you, so it's not a favorite activity, but I click on that, you see it's created a favorite section right at the top here. 0, 0 is the ordering. You can reorder these if you want, just manually. I'll probably change that to be graphical at some point, but that just allows you to do that. So it's reordering against those numbers. It's not against actual, you know, alphabetical ordering. So favorites is now in there. You can't edit or do anything to this. Tell a lie. You shouldn't be able. You can't delete that entry in there because it's linked down here. You can delete that entry. He says when he goes to edit mode. You see, you can't do any editing on the shield block up there, but this one down here you can. You can delete if you want to. Add new activities. The shield block under favorites is a read-only entry. It's not the actual favorite. It's not the actual activity. It's a link to this activity down here. So if I don't want shield block to be a favorite, I can just click off that. But I can put in your favorites, my reactive shield. Attack of opportunity, I know what that does and doesn't really have any buttons against it. If I had a, let's add a healing potion. Let's just give us a lesser healing potion in there. We'll have that under activities, under magic item activities. I can create that as a favorite as well. And so I can have all of the things that I'm probably going to use quite regularly at the top of this activities tab, and so I can get to use them quite a lot, quite easily. You can also, just like you can in like the spells tabs, you can click on the header, the section header, just to hide that, but it's not obvious, you know, that you've actually closed it. Although most of these headers don't exist if there's not any data actually there, they will get cleaned out. So you can just close things down if you just want to change things a little bit there. Obviously, you can scroll through and know, you know, that religion's going to be a skill activity under the religion header. Further down here, you know, if you don't want to use a keyboard or something, you can go and get down to those entries there. But I find searching and using the favorites is probably the thing that you're going to bring up the most as well. There's a filter mode that allows you to display all activities, display stuff that's to do with an encounter, stuff that's just to do with exploration, stuff that's just downtime. None basically, you know, clears it out, so then you can say, okay, you know, I've only got one action left. What can I do? So if I highlight the one action and three actions, I can scroll through and see what's available to me, and, you know, potentially what I might be able to actually use through that. So there's quite a few ways that you can kind of slice and dice this activities section. You can create your own activities category. I don't recommend renaming these, because then when you add new records that have those categories already set up, because these names are used to create the category in the section. But if you wanted to just, you know, do my stuff for maybe, you know, things that you just want at the top of the list here, then you can right click and you can add a section. You can say my section. And then you can, you know, right click and add an item or add activities, and you can add manual activities in here and set up your own activities if there's stuff that's not covered by what comes with the standard data. And obviously during the testing we have a subset of the core rules data that will be expanded over time. Keep an eye on the on the release 19 test thread in the forums as we add in the data that we currently have and add in more. You'll see information about that. But if you do want to set up your own actions through here, then you can absolutely do that. There's the additional actual activity action of skill check. So this is new in release 19. These others you'll be fairly familiar with. Some of them have a couple of extra fields in, but your skill check is a new one. Notice as well I've got the reordering of tags is available, of actions is available. I'll just put another action in there so you can see that actually you can reorder these actions. That's something new in release 19. That was something that was released for other rule sets fairly recently, and we put that code in here as well so you can reorder them. But a skill check, so we do it against a target or ourself or none. We can specify whether it's a min action, whether that button appears when we're in min action mode. We can say if it's apply usages, that's depending on what the actual activity is set up, how the usage, item count, use count. We haven't implemented use count yet, but that's for kind of like number of uses per day. Multi-attack penalty, whether this will increase the multi-attack penalty or not. Whether we show the chat text in the result text in chat. And then we can say, right, what do we check? So we've got acrobatics, we've got all the various, the skills through here. We haven't fully implemented law skills yet. And if you go past, remember with these that if you hold down control, you can then go backwards. So athletics against, so we start with a fixed DC, so you can put in a fixed DC there. You can say none, a fixed DC, fortitude, reflex, will, and then all of the same. Various different DCs that you're going to be setting there. If you have fixed or none, what would happen with that is, so if you had none, that means it would go against 0 unless the GM would use this this widget down the bottom here, this desktop panel, to set the DC of the next check that somebody's doing. If somebody's using targeting and it's not a fixed DC, then that doesn't affect it. But say one of the things is, say for climb, you have a specific, the GM determines and assigns the DC before the check is made. So there's various different levels of like untrained, a ladder, a steep slope, or a low branch tree. So that would be a simple DC. That would be untrained. So that the GM could set that before the actual check was made. And the system will roll and compare the result against that DC. So that's a critical success. And so it tells you the critical success result text in chat. So that's quite good. You can, if you want to set something against a level, you can say, okay, it's a level 5 check, but it's level 5 and it's rare. So you can use these to actually change the data. If somebody's doing a check, say against a hazard, doing a recall knowledge or something like that, or trying to disable the hazard, you can just drag that hazard into there. The GM does this. It sets the level, it sets the rarity, and so yeah, you got DC 51 against a rare level 23 hazard. Yeah, good luck with actually getting rid of that. But that's a quick way for GM to just put that in. You can do that for hazards or PCs. If somebody's doing like recall knowledge against a goblin or something like that, you can do it against items. So if somebody was trying to identify a healing potion, that would be a DC 30 to do that. If somebody's trying to learn a spell or identify a spell or something like that, you could drag the spell into there and notice the spell level it uses for that, which is different than item or creature levels, and that's a DC 23 to identify that spell. So this is quite good for a GM to get quick information about, hey, what's the DC of this, and also it allows them to actually then use that DC against the next check, like a recall knowledge, arcana. They could set that value. It's a critical failure. This is secret. None of that's actually shown to the players, so the GM can just then relate to the players what they actually know from that recall knowledge check. So that's quite a powerful piece of functionality, outside of targeting and using DCs that you're targeting somebody, is just these normal DCs that, a GM can use. One, to easily identify the correct DC, and also, if it's checks that aren't secret checks, everybody knows, oh great, for that climb I got a critical success, so I can move 5 foot plus 5 foot per 20 feet of my land speed for a total of 10 feet, for most PCs. You don't have to open the climb and have a look at, okay, what happens with a critical success, what happens with a success, things like that. So that's all quite powerful and hopefully relatively easy to use, especially for the ones that are already programmed in. But all of the actions and the activities, you can create your own custom ones through there. All of the options, the checkboxes, cyclers, and everything else, they're all available to you to create your own. And store them as an activity in the sidebar as well. Because if you want to create your own activity, just create it, decide on the category, so maybe it's a skill activity, and maybe it's under acrobatics. What's the minimum level, what's the activity, are there any traits, the effects, benefits, the success levels, do you auto create it, does it have usage, add your skill checks, things like that into it, program it, the how to use stuff, and then that's it. That's all done. You export it into a module if you want to use it in other campaigns and things like that. So everything that you're seeing in this test channel, all of the activities, all the actions, and all the things like that, should be able to create it manually through the actual interface. So I know this is a very, very long video. If you're still with me, thanks for holding in there, and thanks for watching. And we'll have more videos appearing over the next few weeks. Hope they're of use to you, and hope you watch them. Thanks a lot. Bye.